Soldiers of the most powerful army in the world march in triumph, watched by warriors in medieval battle gear. They swarm after the French and let fly a volley of arrows. One pierces the thigh of a French officer, and horse archers carry him away in their retreat. He frets through the night, convinced the archaic projectile has poisoned him. These are not highway bandits. These are warriors of the Bashir people, riding for the Russian Tsar in the fight against Napoleon. Their renowned bravery is real, but at this stage it changes little. Napoleon has just put the Russian army to flight at the Battle of Freedelland, and the Tsar is compelled to make peace. As the French Empire tightens its grip on Europe, the Bashir riders return to their herds of horses and warm yurts. Long ago, nomadic horse archers built the empires of the Huns and Mongols. Soon, these Bashirs will meet Napoleon's army again, and steppe warfare will be tested against the firepower of a modern empire. Some 600,000 men follow Napoleon into Russia. They pass deserted villages and farmland committed to the flame. The Russians leave them neither supplies nor sustenance. After a vicious battle against the Russian army, Napoleon and his depleted forces enter a smoldering and abandoned Moscow. The Tsar summons hundreds of thousands of subjects to repel the invaders, including a great multitude of irregular cavalry. Among them are the Kiks, the Cossacks, and Tatars, and of special note, the fearsome Bashirs. Linked culturally with the Basheria people, they contribute 10,000 warriors. The Bashirs patrol the devastated countryside and tamp down unrest. Some glint in coats of mail and steel helmets carrying rifles and pistols. Many ride with simpler gear, a cap and robe, a bow slung behind them, lances and swords at their sides. The call to arms reaches the yurt of a man named Jonturi. Like other Bashirs, he is a Muslim raised to ride horses and meet his enemies with bravery. They ask for the blessing of Allah and chant a battle song. They promise to show the Russian realm and the whole world that the hand of the Bashir Batir, armed with hardened steel, will drench vast fields with the blood of French enemies. Yet it is not a great battle, but hunger and the looming winter that drive out Napoleon. In October, the failing army begins the long retreat. They drag through oppressive cold and snow and suffer black and windy nights. Their trail is harassed by enemy Cossacks, and soldiers perish by the tens of thousands while others fall into enemy hands. The invasion costs Napoleon 500,000 men. Napoleon does not lose resolve. As a new coalition forms and the Russian army marches west, he reinforces his ranks with hundreds of thousands of conscripts and launches the 1813 German campaign. That summer, Jonturi and his wife endure a long, sweltering ride to the front. Thousands of mounted Bashirs trample over the land in large war caravans. Mass migration comes naturally to people of nomadic and semi-nomadic origin. Some travel with spouses and yurts, and every man brings a reserve horse for sustained transportation, or, if needed, consumption. Their mullahs, Islamic clergymen, accompany each unit and give spiritual encouragement. Islam first took root among some Bashirs in the early 10th century. The Mongols arrived centuries later, and the heirs of Genghis Khan scattered and decimated the tribes that stood against them. In time, the Mongol overlords of this western Kate came to embrace Islam. So did the surviving Bashirs, their faith deepening and language changing as waves of Muslim Turks settled in Basheria. Turk-speaking Bashirs persisted in their meadows and forests, and the desire to retain their lands and privileges led some chiefs to swear allegiance to Ivan the Terrible in the 16th century. That is how the Bashirs entered the Russian orbit. Centuries later, Jonturi rides toward Dresden in the service of Russia. During the campaign, he and about 50 men are posted away from the main detachment as watchmen. They soon detect a party of French heavy cavalry. Arrows fly and steel clatters. Jonturi drives his lance through a foe, but the French cuirassiers begin to overwhelm them. A blade strikes his shoulder, and when he comes to, half of their comrades are dead and the rest are tied up. His wife is not near, and he fears she is gone. The prisoners are mounted and taken away. An hour passes. Then the earth begins to tremble. A charging company of allied donks appears, routing the French and saving the Bashir prisoners. Riding alongside the rescuers is Jonturi's wife. She had escaped the attack, alerted the main force, and helped rescue her husband. Even so, in this age of firearms, modern units determine the course of war. Napoleon triumphs at Dresden. Much of the victorious French army encamps around the city, while week by week the coalition amasses forces. Skirmishes break out along the front. Colonel Moreau, a French light cavalry officer, notices the presence of Bashirs and Tatars and calls them semi-barbarous Asiatics nicknamed Cupids because of their bows and arrows. He admits their raids succeed in creating controlled chaos. They buzz around like a swarm of wasps, flying all over and very hard to catch. The Russians support them with detachments of Hussars to profit from the confusion the Bashirs create. Most notably, Napoleon himself stops on a hill to marvel at the approaching horse archers. Curious, he wishes to meet them. Moreau orders 2 squadrons to hide behind a clump of trees while the remainder continues the march. The Bashirs follow the column and are suddenly attacked. Many are killed and about 30 taken prisoner. They are brought to the emperor, who expresses surprise at these wretched horsemen sent with no other arms than bows and arrows to fight European soldiers armed with sabers, lances, guns, and pistols. Back at camp, French soldiers give wine to the Bashirs, whose grimaces and capers amuse the watchers, including Napoleon. To the Bashirs, wartime efforts carried deep political meaning. They had not always accepted Russian rule. For 2 centuries, many tribes paid tribute, yet remained largely autonomous. They wintered in villages and migrated in spring, practiced beekeeping, hunting, and gathering. They were spared the toils of serfdom, but their fortune changed in the 18th century. Increasing state intrusion brought settlers onto their communal lands, pastures fragmented. Fewer families made old migrations, and some settled into farms. Outside Basheria, the state impeded mosque construction and confiscated land from Muslims who did not convert to Orthodox Christianity. Furious Bashirs joined rebellions, but imperial armies crushed them and devastated the population. Catherine the Great then moved to integrate them. She granted power and status to Bashir religious leaders and promoted tolerance of Islam, arguing that prohibiting religions would harm the peace and security of subjects. Now the Bashirs are expected to provide troops, organized to serve. For Jonturi and his people, the war against Napoleon is a chance to prove themselves to Tsar Alexander and to Russia. They are among the 500,000 men who converge at Leipzig. On October 16, 1813, the Battle of the Nations begins. It is likely the largest battle fought to that point. Guns roar and men fall by the thousands. On the 18th, Moreau and his cavalry are caught in a sea of troops. A charge of more than 20,000 Cossacks and Bashirs surrounds French squadrons. Thousands of arrows fly, with little damage at first, because the Bashirs, being entirely irregulars, do not form ranks and awkwardly fire over one another. Moreau calls them the world's least dangerous troops, but their spirit does not break. The more wasps are killed, the more seem to arrive. A finest NCO is pierced by an arrow that enters his chest and exits his back. He breaks the shaft with 2 hands, pulls out the rest, and dies moments later. Horses and men are wounded. Moreau looks down to find an arrow lodged in his own right thigh. The carnage rages until the coalition wins the battle on the 19th. In the months that follow, coalition forces advance into France and take Paris. Napoleon is exiled to Elba. Parisians are mystified by Bashirs with bows and arrows, pitching yurts on the outskirts. Jonturi later recalls that the women of Paris are so beautiful his wife forbids him to walk the streets alone. Napoleon's return and final defeat bring his era to an end. The Bashir horse archers do not change the course of war, but they earn the respect of Tsar Alexander. In 1824 he visits Basheria, dines on traditional fare in a village, and praises the people as valued members of the Russian Empire. Years later, passing through the meadows of Bashortan, the writer Vasily Zafirov visits a yurt camp by a forested river. An elder Bashir welcomes travelers with pillows and fermented horse milk. A coat of mail hangs in the yurt. He laments that Bashirs no longer wear the armor he once wore. His name is Jonturi, a veteran of the Great War against Napoleon. In the end, what endures more, the weapons in a rider's hand or the memory carried in a rider's heart?